Okay, we're live. We're here with everyone, I think. Let's see. I'm just checking to see our connections. Okay, unless they maybe. Oh, there we go. All right, so we are here. We are live. And I'm going to get started with the show. So, good morning, everyone. You're watching our weekly Sunday morning show, Stand Up, Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. We simulcast on Facebook and YouTube, so please share with your friends and please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. I'm Margot Paez. I'm a scientist, engineer, and occasional journalist. And this is my co-host down here, the amazing grassroots organizer, Carlos Marroquin. We have a really cool guest today. Her name is Jeanna Harris. She is a nurse-tivist, which is to say she's a nurse and an activist. And she's worked as an RN in multiple clinical settings, including medical and surgical, cardiac rehabilitation, acute dialysis, and transplants. Currently, she is a clinical case manager facilitating the coordination of patient services across the continuum of healthcare needs. This role has allowed her to see that our healthcare system is fundamentally flawed and why small reform just won't do. Jeanna represents the 54th Assembly District as a member of the LA County and State Democratic Central Committee and has been a DNC delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 and is currently the co-chair of the Healthcare for All chapter in Los Angeles. So thank you, Jeanna, so much for joining us today. And Carlos, why don't you also tell us a little bit about how you know Jeanna?
Well, good morning, everybody. Wherever you may be watching us from, happy Labor Day weekend to everyone out there, to your families, people who are traveling, visiting families out there, and just enjoying the weekend here in Southern California. Beautiful Sunday morning, sunny. It's gonna be hot, and our highlights today will be the workers and all that people do to keep American going, to keep our cities moving, your communities. A lot of good work by the labor movement. We're gonna be talking about that. But our guest, Jeanna Harris, a personal friend of mine, someone that I respect so much at so many levels because of who she is as a person and also as an activist. She brings so much to the movement. She brings and adds so much here in Southern California to our grassroots organizing and overall the work that is being done throughout. But she, like as I say, she's a personal friend of mine. She volunteers with us over at Urban Partners Los Angeles. But that's not the only place where she volunteers. She does just so much work all around. So Gina, we are honored to have you here today. I consider you family.
Of course, we're always family. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really honored anytime that, I'm given space to be me. So thank you guys for joining in. I appreciate it. Like Carlos said, I am a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but a nurse at the base of it all. And I was a nurse before politics. So I'm a continuous advocate for patients in my community. And I want to thank Carlos and Margot for having me. So thank you guys so much and happy Labor Day weekend. I can't emphasize the importance of staying safe though this weekend. I know as we are getting real tired of staying distant, and I miss hugs and hugging everybody as much as the next person. I just can't emphasize enough the strain that is being put on our system right now. California, we're doing better than some states in the South, but we always are walking a very fine line. Each holiday weekend scares us. Where we kind of T-minus 14 days is what we say it is from the holiday weekend, is that we start counting down 2 weeks to see if there's going to be a spike or not. With the weather being good, everyone's outside. Good thing is this year and this time, the vaccination rates are increasing. They have been greatly increased. And so this year, it may not be as bad, but then, we still have a good faction of unvaccinated, which I wish everyone would go ahead and get the vaccine. So those who are unvaccinated, and I'm sorry, you guys let me get on my COVID soapbox. But those of you who are unvaccinated, please
Go right ahead.
keep in mind, if you have not received the vaccine, whether you have had COVID or not, you are still at risk. And so you are still living the life of lockdown. So just be cautious of that. I'm gonna step off the soapbox on COVID.
Great. So Labor Day, of course, we're celebrating the labor movement, the accomplishments that we have had throughout the decades on successes and again gains by the labor movement as they represent workers. So much to talk about that because especially nowadays, you know, the everything that the pandemic has brought has really put a great strain on workers, and many people have lost their jobs. There's a lot of people there with no work. There's people that have actually realized how poorly they have been treating over the years as they were employed by companies that ripped them off, and they actually the pandemic uncover some of those business practices relating to management and labor, how a lot of people realized that they didn't need to work 2 and 3 jobs. You know, they were pretty much taking advantage of the workers, and all those things we have seen through the pandemic. But we also see the changes that are coming about because of the different changes within the different, I'm going to say, jobs, different companies. We have automation coming in. We have robotics. We see, for example, how a lot of technology have taken away jobs in ways that we never thought possible, and all those things are continue to come about, and we're gonna see even more in the next few years. And this is why we can never stress enough the importance of being able to form unions, to be part of a union, to join the unions, to support the unions, even if your job doesn't offer the a union, or you have not organized unions. We're going to be talking a little bit on all that. But the fact of the matter is that we have some of the workers, some of the most amazing people working on the front lines, and that is the nurses. We see our hospitals right now being overtaken in so many states. Emergency rooms filled up. I don't have to explain you all the details because you have seen it through the news. But Gina, as a nurse, you are fully aware of all the things that nurses have to deal with, including the fact that they are overwhelmed with cases and patients out there. Can you give us a little picture of all this and put some perspective into all this, and how how the nurses play an important role, not only in our lives, but in the labor movement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the nurses, we are the pulse of the heart. We keep that heart beating. I mean, and I would be remiss. I have to give a shout out to the nurse assistants, the CNAs, the techs, yes, the nurses, we are the powerhouse and we get a lot of the attention. But one thing I could say as throughout my nursing career is that having a good CNA, a good tech, it makes or breaks your day. It really does. And so I always want to give them a shout out. They don't get a lot of attention, the assistants and stuff like that, but I do want to give them a shout out. And then environmental service, with COVID, these are the people who actually have to go in and clean that room. That is, after that patient discharges or maybe passes away, those are the people that have to walk into that infected room and clean it. And those people deserve a hand clap too. Even though, I understand, like I said, the nurses, we get the attention, but I always spread the love. I feel like it is definitely a team effort. And I always was told there was no I in team. The only I is in the a-hole, and I'm not the a-hole. So I will share the love. But when it comes to nursing, and just to say, I've been in the background, I took a job, unfortunately, due to a back injury that took me off of the patient care side, but I became support. And clinical case management, which is handling all those discharges, clearing those beds, making that hospital flow. And so what, we were seeing happening was that, of course, first in the beginning, nobody knew what this was. Nobody was prepared. And yeah, then the PPE shortage happened. And, one of the groups I work with was Project Mask Los Angeles. I'm sorry, guys. They were making masks and delivering them to hospitals. And because hospitals were that low on PPE and nurses were, having to scramble, making that decision of going in that room, knowing that person has this airborne respiratory droplet type virus and doesn't have the proper PPE. And then having to reuse the PPE. That is stuff that we typically don't do. Those N95s come off, before you leave that room, or right after you leave the room, that N95 comes off, you pitch it, you get a new one when you go back into another room that requires that level of isolation. Now, that doesn't happen. Even currently to this day, we're walking in, we wear we have a surgical mask. If you're not going into COVID patients' rooms, you just keep on this basically almost the same surgical mask the whole day, or you can, maybe swap it out, get a few, but we're still, not at the point where we were before the pandemic, where it came to PPE. And now that we fast forward, here we are almost 2 years past, now the industry from coast to coast, I would say globally, has taken such a big hit. I remember attending a vigil from CNA for nurses we lost during the pandemic. And this was back in March. And it was so many. And one thing I noticed was that it was so many nurses of color. You could tell by their names that, these people, these nurses that we had lost were not, it wasn't Sally Smith or, it was literally, people, immigrant travel nurses, things like that we had lost. And a lot of them were over the age of 40, 45, close to retirement. And they were the ones that were on the front lines that lost their lives so close to the end of their careers, where they were supposed to be getting ready to enjoy their lives, and they lost it due to COVID. And so that is one of the things that made a lot of us as nurses reevaluate our lives, reevaluate what we're doing. I knew nurses who were taking on COVID patients. They decided, no matter how young they were, they're in their 30s like me, to make a living will, because they weren't sure. Granted, you should have one, but it became precedent at that point to create a will and to make preparations in case you get sick and you can't, you need to have a decision maker. All of that, our whole just perspective changed. And then that made me want to get in a community more, because I wanted to translate that in a way that the community understood. And that, this wasn't a game. This wasn't a government control, whatever QAnon crap is going on out there. This was true, real. This was really happening, and it when you see it on TV versus when you see it in person or you're dealing with it, it's totally different. And I wanted the community to know that. And then as vaccines started rolling out and I saw the rejection of the vaccine or the resistance based on, it being politicized basically, and the politics getting involved in it, that was another reason why I wanted to get involved, especially in Black and brown communities, because we were definitely not trusting this vaccine. And some still don't, and I understand the history behind it. But I really wanted people to know that this is a life or death. You will get sick, you will die. And that's where I wanted to hit it home. And I wanted to share the experiences because we needed that help. We needed the community to take this seriously, because once you hit that hospital door, your chances start to decrease. Yeah, plenty have survived, but we don't know 10, 15 years from now, what the long-term effects will be yet. And so, but a lot of people died. And right now, a lot of younger people are dying. And that's hurtful, even to nurses that I've talked to in this past week, to see somebody our age, like in their 20s or 30s, go down with COVID. It's scary because and these people are perfectly healthy. Otherwise, there's no conditions, there's none of that going on. They're just unvaccinated, and they come in, and you see these people on all these machines and all these things going on, and you're like, that can easily be me. So that was another kind of it's been a little bit of trauma. I think there is a level of PTSD too, with some of the nurses who have been working with patients from the very beginning. But labor played a factor here because the nurses, a lot of the nurses are protected by, CNA, the nurses union, and here in California. And that is very fortunate for California. I come where I started my career, didn't have a nurses union, and there was no nurse to patient safety. The ratios were way crazy. Here they are stricter on patient ratios. So that if you have an ICU, you only have 2 patients. If you have, depending on how much care that patient needs. But those ratios, even here in California, are getting thrown off because there's just no staff. Staff are out on leave. Some nurses have completely left the industry, gone. A registered nurse all out of the industry just because of what has gone on. They've reevaluated their lives, not mad at them whatsoever. I know I thought about it a couple of times. And they just left. So that's a spot open. Granted, nursing schools are full, but even nursing students that I have seen, they still want to come into the industry, but they're scared. And I'm scared for them because they don't have the experience to handle this new level of kind of like flying by the seat of your pants type nursing. And so, but with the labor unions, at least there is some type of protection. Like, if there's an issue, with staffing or PPE, the nurses are quick to rally and contact their union rep to come and fight for them. And the unions come in. And that is what is really good, is that even management, which I've also worked in, you have to tread lightly because it's like, that the union can, the workers have a right to unionize. I've never blocked that. I don't believe in union busting, even though I had to be pulled into plenty of those conversations. I don't believe in that. I believe in the workers' right. Like, hey, if we were doing our job, the workers won't feel the need to go contact their union rep. So, but because they have that extra protection here, I think that that's helped. Now, the story is completely different in the South. The South, those nurses are getting beat down and they don't have those same protections that we might have here in California, which is another reason why we must protect the protections we have. Because, what's going on in other parts of the country, it's a free for all. It's devastating.
Thank you so much for giving us such a comprehensive overview there. I had a couple of questions. My first one was, you mentioned that a number of the nurses who have passed away working on the front line were people of color. Do you have a sense of why that is?
I mean, if I can be perfectly honest, it is because, especially with travel nursing, the way travel nursing works is that, you connect with an agency that works with hospitals. The hospitals contact the agency when they have a need. The agency sends a nurse or nurses. And that was utilized a lot as nurses were going down, the pandemic, those agencies were being overutilized. I mean, what they were offering in payment was ridiculous. Like, I even considered going to New York last year because of what they were paying to go. But at the same time, I've never been a travel nurse, but I know I've worked with them and I've seen the way they've been treated. And it is not, you're not family, basically. You're not one of us. It's kind of like one of those scenarios. So a travel nurse will always typically get the worser assignment. You do not get trained. You are a nurse and you are licensed, but learning that particular organization is key. Learning, as much as where are the medications? Where are the supplies? The particular medical record, the EMR that you use. Granted, a lot of them are similar companies and names, but the way that each hospital sets them up is a little different. Learning, just having that quick little orientation of that is key to making sure you can flow. And that isn't happening. And then a lot of times the nurses can get a little clicky and kind of like out that travel nurse and put you on ice and let you just go, here, you get this assignment. Oh, I don't want that patient. Give it to the traveler. Oh, those are COVID patients. Put the traveler on the COVID unit, and let the rest, they protect. Like I said, it's just, it's an outsider in your house. And unfortunately, it's kind of like that. I'm not speaking for saying it's all of them, but for the most part, yeah. And so I kind of put 2 and 2 together. When I started seeing people who had nurses who had passed away, they were travelers. And it was because they probably, got thrown into a COVID unit. And, they, like I said, a lot of them were older too, which was more dangerous. But at the time, it was just, we'll take whatever we can get. So I think that played a big portion of it. And then, I mean, racism is real on every aspect of our country. It is woven into the American flag, as I say. So, we have to be very real. It happens in nursing too. Not just in California, but in states all over the country. Imagine going into a more of a red state, being a nurse of color and expecting to get treated equally. No, it's not going to happen. You are going to get thrown to the crap and nobody's going to care. And that's just being completely real. And so that's why I believe that we did see a lot more nurses of color, especially, they in the beginning when we didn't know that it was affecting communities of color a lot more heavily than it was, our fairer skinned brothers and sisters, that weren't as heavily impacted. So, there were a lot of factors that went into that, but I do believe that a lot of it was because we don't sometimes get the pick of the litter on assignments and then on top of that, we also have to work harder. My career is not the way I act, and what I carry does not show what I had to go through to get there. And we take on a lot more, we work a lot harder, and we just to feel like we can be considered equal or not have to feel the pressure of management and stuff being targeted because we might be the only Black nurse on the unit. That's happened to me multiple times, being the only person of color on an entire unit. So who do you think gets blamed? Who do you think has to really make sure that my charting is A1, everything is good? Because I don't want to be that. It's easy to sit there and point the finger and say, she did it, when you don't blend in. So that was just kind of what I feel like is contributed to that.
Gina, one of the things that we have heard over the pandemic is that the caseload that a lot of our nurses have, medical workers and stuff, they overwhelm. And this is some of the things that the unions have been fighting for, because a lot of the workers are overwhelmed with patients. And this is where the unions come in, and this is the importance of the unions. For some of you that don't think that unions play a key role at your job sites or any particular area, it is critical, because they will go in there and fight for you. They will fight for the rights. In this case, the nurses raise their voices, sound the alarm. Like, look, you're overwhelming us. We having X amount of patients, when in fact we should only have this amount of patients, because the quality of work will depend on how many patients you have. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that more or less what's going on too?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like I said, I was frontline support, but, hearing what the nurse were talking about, and then even with the current ratios being what they are, that was in a normal setting. That was pre-pandemic. Those ratio laws are pre-pandemic. So when you have, they were putting COVID patients, anywhere, but if you had like on a telemetry unit where you could have maybe 4 or 5 patients, maybe 6, no, 4 or 5. Yeah. And then 2 of them have COVID. We know COVID patients can go down at any time. Like 1 minute they're just floating along and they're just on a little bit of oxygen and they're talking and all this stuff. And then the next minute they're getting intubated. You have to keep a really watchful eye on those patients, even if they are considered stable in that first hour. By the end of your shift, they're in the ICU. And I know that the nurses were saying that, I can't watch them as closely when I have, 3 other patients. And then maybe you have someone who's just, sick, or you might have a family member who just really wants to bug you about everything and ask all those intricate questions that take up a lot of your time. Those types didn't go anywhere. It's still all there. So everything that was going on at the time before the pandemic was still there. And now you add the COVID patients on there, which, just having to put on that amount of PPE takes time. So it's just like, that I think that a big argument that was happening was that, hey, you know what? If I'm taking on COVID patients, we should just have a COVID unit, which happened. The health department started creating more and more rules about how to keep those patients kind of isolated in a portion of the unit, versus having the nurse kind of mix them in, because that's dangerous. You go from non-COVID to COVID, COVID to non-COVID, that's how we could spread. But also, I think that one of the things was that, you know what, these COVID patients require a lot of monitoring, a lot of sometimes hand-holding. People are scared. And as nurses, like I said, we're advocates first. So if you have to spend 10 more minutes in that room to comfort that patient, I would encourage nurses to do that. But instead, I don't have time. I'm sorry, I have to go. I'll come back. I promise. I'll be back. I'll be back. And they go running out the room to their next patient because they're so busy. And so I think that was a big argument too. I really don't know how the outcome were. I don't think that the ratios per se changed. I do think that they did start trying to give more support to nurses taking care of COVID patients. But it became an issue then. Well, where are the nurses? You know, that's been a big problem too, is that across the country, and like I said, probably globally, are struggling to find nurses.
So we talked a little bit about labor, but as you made a point that things are very different outside of California, especially in the South, where there really are no labor unions. So seeing that this is a Labor Day weekend and labor is certainly on our minds, what are the prospects of nurses outside of a state like California being able to unionize, being able to put up, a real front against and push back against these types of things? Because I mean, here I'm in Georgia right now, and 90% of the ICUs are full, and these nurses are working very, very hard, and they don't have a union.
Yeah, and that's what is detrimental, because, like what we were saying before, that I didn't understand unions until really I got involved in politics. I'm a millennial, and the labor unions or labor movement had taken a huge hit in the last few decades. Like labor was strong early on, in the Industrial Revolution and times like that. But corporate America took over and really hit that labor movement hard. And so now you have generations like mine who aren't as familiar with the labor movement as the previous generations, like the baby boomers and things, because we just didn't grow up in it. If our family wasn't union, if we didn't have a mom, dad, aunt, uncle that was union, like my family, I didn't come from a labor family. We were just working to get paid so that we could survive. And that's the story amongst most of America. We weren't really checking to see if it's union or not. So now, millennials, we are kind of the majority generation right now in the working population, voting class. I wish we would take advantage of that. And we're out there and we don't have that affiliation to labor, like I said, as previous generations do. And so I think that kind of hurts organizing to get a union, because we can be swayed with, well, they offered us just a dollar more, even though that dollar doesn't sound, it sounds great. But then at the same time, if you knew what the labor movement could do for you to get you that $5 more, but they don't know. And nobody really has the way to figure it out. And so for the small amounts of people who do decide to organize and try to form a union, we saw this happen in Alabama at Amazon. They had support. Then they got national support and still couldn't overcome it. And so, I mean, it's really a battle. And then you become a pariah, like you become a pariah in your company. You do not feel comfortable. And like I said, having been in these conversations where I have heard the strategies of what to do to prevent labor, organizing, I can tell you that it is not a good feeling to be that person, that voice to stand up for your workers and try to form a union, because you're not safe. And so for nurses who are already stressed out, who are already working, who can't really take their head up off, take that, kind of grip off your neck to look and breathe, to stand up and pick another fight, I can understand why they won't. Because they're tired. When you're tired, you don't want to fight anymore. You just want to do your job. You just want to get paid. You just want to go home. You just want to live. And now I think that while it is very important, if people are out there who see this, who are in the South, who are thinking about it, if you get enough people, run with it, and post about it, talk about it, and get the nation behind you, because we want you to have rights. We want you to be able to be safe, most importantly. And, and we know that the hospital systems all have a bottom line, and it's not the worker. So that's just kind of how I feel about what's going on there. If I could put my heart where their heart is, I know that that's probably one of the big reasons why, because people are afraid to do that, to stand up to the Goliath. There's not as many Davids out there as you think. People are afraid, and rightfully so. I mean, like, it's scary to go up against a corporation, especially if you lose. Now your whole livelihood's at stake. So, that's one of the things that I could say. But like I said, for those who are thinking about it, I just want to give them the encouragement to do it, because the benefit is worth it.
Right. Over the years, I mean, I've been involved in the labor movement. I am a shop steward. I represent letter carriers here in Los Angeles. And I can tell you story after story of the benefits of being able to be part of a union, be able to protect the workers. We see the abuses. I mean, I mingle and talk to a lot of other union representatives, some of the work that is being done, whether it's on, for the carpenters, where you have the people that move, let's say, the trucks. You have Teamsters, you have the sanitation people, et cetera, et cetera. So many people out there, but in each job site, there's different challenges that workers face. The nurses is one thing. They face, the amount of work that they have to do, the amount of patients. But now we're talking about other kinds of job sites and the challenges that they face. The farmers, for example, all those things. And being able to have someone that represents you is so important, because we know, as you say, Gina, the bottom line for a lot of these corporations is profit. It's not the worker. They want to see how much they can exploit from you, how much they can take away from you, how much they can actually ride on you, how much more work they can give you so they don't have to hire another person, how much they can get away with not giving you benefits, how much they can use you on a day. Instead of giving you 8 hours work for 8 hours pay, they want to give you 12 hours work for 8 hours pay. And the list goes on and on. Abusive management. We know that some of these people, their jobs get to their heads when all of a sudden they think they act like God, and they want to, pretty much step on anybody because they want to look good to their bigger bosses, and they want to show how much they're saving. So all that rides on top of the workers. I've seen that as a union representative. I see abusive management that will stop at nothing to try to make themselves look good, to make the numbers, etc. And they don't care which family or which worker they hurt. And when they go after a worker, they're going after families. And we were talking a little bit prior to going live here, Gina, regarding the fact that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of workers that have no idea on what unions can do for them and the benefits of union. And they really don't care because they're just too busy trying to make a living. That's a problem, especially moving forward, because corporations, as we have seen through the pandemic, they didn't care about workers.
No, not at all. I mean, they didn't care about their safety. What was it? The meat industry, in kind of the plain states, Nebraska and places like that, where they had those meat workers. I mean, granted, the conditions, and I had actually known someone who worked in one of those meat packing plants. The conditions pre-pandemic were already deplorable. I mean, deplorable. If you've ever driven past one of these places, a slaughterhouse, you can smell it. So if you can smell it in the air from the freeway, imagine what it smells like for the worker inside. And tell me, somebody somewhere tell me that's okay, because I don't think it's okay. But the thing is too, is like you said, these are rural areas that already don't have jobs. That meat packing plant might be the biggest employer for, a couple of counties in those rural areas. And so when you get a job there, that's almost a blessing, because there's no other jobs that within, distance. These people are, kind of the working poor. And they don't have, reliable transportation to go drive them 2 or 3 different counties to go through and get to a city where they can be more gainfully employed. And then they have families too. And so when they get employed by this employer who is only person providing jobs, You think that they're going to try to piss off the management and unionize? No, they're going to try to do their job to the best of their ability. And so, that is what the issue is there. And I think that is something that's going on across America, is that we have been so boxed in mentally that we need this employer. We must have this employer. We must, this big name, like, the one that's named after a rainforest that I won't name. It's just that I think that is what the mentality is now, is that, oh my God, I got a job here. That's so great. And, even though you get work to the ground, and it's like, but I got that job, I can grow, I could do this, I could do that. They paint the picture of how much growth and opportunity and how many benefits. Oh, we'll pay for you to go to school and to do this. Yeah, if you survive. These places also have a high turnover rate. If you look at the turnover rates, it matches. What I've noticed with healthcare is there's a healthcare system, HCA, that is really big. It's one of the biggest healthcare systems, I think, in the country. But each hospital that I've noticed get bought by HCA, they just completely go down in satisfaction. Their work practices go down, their ethics go down. One of them, I think, is like up in San Jose. They got flipping fined, people pulling out left and right. But they're owned by one of the biggest biggest healthcare organizations in the country. So if you would think that if they were investing properly into their acquisitions, why would the employees be jumping ship? Why would your partners be jumping ship? Why would your satisfaction rates be going into the toilet? Because they're not investing in their workers. They're not even investing in the what they just bought. All they're doing is milking it for profit and running again. So, that is what's going on. And I think the reason why we don't see a lot more labor is because, like I said, the whole movement took a hit, and there's not as much, kind of publicizing of unions. Like, we're not being taught about unions in school. The labor movement, I don't remember. Granted, it's been a while since I was in high school, but I don't remember learning about really the true meaning of Labor Day in school. So, that here we are a problem. If you want to go deep into that root cause on why we see what we're seeing now, it starts at the foundation. The labor movement has been technically kind of erased until you come into a world that brings the labor movement to you. So I got involved in politics. And that is when I learned how powerful the labor movement was. If I had never to make it that turn to come into the political sphere, I would have never to this day really understood how powerful labor is or was or should be.
There we go. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this whole thing with labor it plays a big role in why we're in the situation we are today. And it's not so much that labor just gave up, but there was a concerted effort before we were born to destroy labor. And all of the gains that we had after the Great Depression or during the Great Depression under FDR, as limited as they were only possible because at the time we had an incredibly strong labor movement and also incredibly strong communist parties at the time as well. So FDR realized that there was no way he was going to get anything done without their support, without support of labor. And so, we had a period of highly constrained capitalism for a little while, but those capitalists, they fought back and they found a hole, an opportunity in which they could make their move. And it has to do with certain economic ideas that were prevalent at the time. But basically, there's this idea, and it still exists in mainstream economics, which governs, how everything works right now, which is that, eventually the markets will turn to full employment, right? So that gave way for this new idea of neoliberalism, and which is just to completely deregulate the markets, deregulate the labor markets, and to crush labor, which is what they did. And so that puts us in the situation that we are in now today, which is that we are really at the very beginning of rebuilding the labor movement. And I think that the problem is that we're also running up against a limited amount of time in order to do the things that we need to do in order to secure a better future for ourselves because of climate change. So this situation is very, very difficult, and you've highlighted so many of the the real practical issues of what we're facing, and when you talk about how people are just too tired and people just want a job, they just want something because what is the what is the option, which is starvation, losing your home. When you're faced with that as the alternative, this is not a society or a world that is meant for people to really be happy or thrive, or in whatever way that means. It's really to crush our humanity and to make us feel like all we are just this is all we can have. So I'm hoping that at some point that labor, that people will realize that this is not enough, that they can imagine that there's something more, because we do need a very drastic change in our society. Carlos, Gina.
Well, I think it's happening very subtly. I see it, and maybe not so subtle, but you see people work-life balance being talked about. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, the Great Resignation happening. It's been an article that's been pushed around, the Great Resignation. I took part of it. I left my job and took a new job. So I was I contributed to the Great Resignation statistic, but I didn't completely stop working. I just left what I was doing and wasn't happy. And that's what people are doing. People are now seeking happiness. Happiness is now the priority above wages, above benefits. It is work-life balance. I want to have my life. I don't mind contributing X amount of time to you to get paid so I can live my life, but I want to be able to live my life. And that is what's happening. So I think that this could be be the birth and the foundation of an uprising of the labor movement, because of course corporations are going to fight back and say, well, no, you can't continue to work from home, even though it's perfectly fine. And there's really no implications for you working from home, but we want you back on site. Well, the workers are not happy about that. My kids are still, I have to be home for my kids. They're working, they have reduced schedules. They have this, they have that. What happens if I have to go under quarantine? I don't want to have to use my PTO when I'm perfectly able to do my job from home. And I think that we may see more people looking into, well, what can unions do? I mean, and I think that this could be a good time for unions to stand up on that and rise up and really take advantage of workers wanting their lives back and wanting to have more protections without feeling like they are at the will of, like you said, Carlos, management with an ego.
Right. So those are some of the things that we are foreseeing that will be taking place. Is the question has been asked so many times, why people are not taking the jobs back? We thought that they wanted to work. You know what I mean? People did realize, how much they were missing of their lives. Working 2-3 jobs, they had no life, and then at the end of the day, you have no savings in the bank account because everything went to rent, to gas, to this and that, to food, that prices have increased in leaps and bounds. So all those things are things that are real to any person, to any family. And when you look at what they are offering you in return for you spending the entire day at a job site, people are saying, no, we're going to have to find another way. I think that as we face these new changes, the labor movement needs to step up. This is our opportunities, but also challenges. Because as I say, now we have corporations like Amazon and a few others that are looking into drones to be able to make deliveries, are looking into more computerized technology to be able to sort all their products and use less people. Those things are real. And if we don't come together, if we don't, again, unionize, and that's pretty much what the word unionize means, is coming together, is being able to create a powerhouse that will fight back, we will continue to see workers being under attack. Here in California, this is a classical example of what we are facing with. Looking into the future, we have a Republican Party that decided after the third year of the governor's term that they want to recall him. After the third year, we only have 1 year. He only has 1 year left in his term before re-election. But they decided, no, they're taking advantage. Now listen to this. They're taking advantage of the pandemic. They could care less about the pandemic. They could care less about the workers. They could care less about people not having homes. They created a lot of these situations. I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is innocent, but I'm saying they have been the full force behind the attacks on workers. Now there's a possibility that we may have a Republican, becoming the governor in California. And mind you, he has, in this case, is Larry Elder, that's probably the leading Republican coming against Gavin Newsom. If you hear everything that he has to say, he has zero interest on workers. There is zero interest on people in housing. They say that they care, but the reality is they don't. They are pro management, they are pro developers, they are pro landlords, etc., etc. They don't care about minimum wage. They don't care about your wages. They don't care about benefits. That's the Republican mentality. And that's what they're going to be pushing for. And they pretty much are going to say to us is once if he succeeds, it's pretty much an attack on workers. All those gains that we have said, as Gina said at the beginning of the show here, is all those gains will pretty much disappear because they want to privatize everything. That's what they've been doing over the years. Deregulate everything. They don't care about safe working conditions. They don't care about the environment, Marco. You see what these corporations do. They don't care about these things. It's all about profit. So we need to support unions. We need to support labor. If you don't have a union, we need to start talking about what it's going to take for your work site to be able to have a union. Those are the things that are real. If we don't, we're going to continue to decrease. And by all means, really, why is it that you have to even go and ask for a raise? That tells you a lot about their mentality. And then they fight you if you dare to ask for a raise. So with unions, they have contracts. They have to come to the table. They have to negotiate. You have to put everything on the table. And that's what unions will do. They're not perfect. They're not perfect by all means. But I can tell you, having been part of a union, I remember when I started working in the post office 35 years ago, I see what I used to get paid, and I see what I get paid now. I see the benefits that I had then, and I see the benefits that I have now. I am proud to be a union member. I support my union.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is key. And like you said, unions aren't perfect. I have talked to people across the gamut who had bad experience with their union rep. Their union rep didn't step up for them the way that they should. And I understand that. That is totally everywhere you go is a human running something, right? And so to err is human. And no, you might not get the most perfect union rep, but guess what? You can make that union rep go away too. If that person really gets enough complaints, that union will not, that union wants to keep that contract. That union wants to keep you. And so if they get enough complaints about that union rep, guess what? That union rep may go away if they're not doing their job, because their job is to protect and fight for you.
And you can vote them out.
You can vote them out. And that's the good thing about that is that, but you have to participate, just like democracy. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You just don't get to sit in the stands and watch. You actually got to get on the ground and play. And the same thing with unions. If you want your voice to be heard, you got to talk to your union rep. Like I said, I finally 30, whatever years old I am, finally just got my first union job. It's my first one. And already, you know, me like, hey, union rep, because I already know, you know, like I said, from the political work that I've done, but I know for people who don't, who just happen to take a job that happen to be under a union, who happen to know nothing about what's going on, you know, just go to that orientation. Just make sure you know what you have the ability. You don't have to be that involved. You don't have to, you know, be a union lead for your department or anything. You just go to the orientation, know what you have, know that if you start feeling like you did something with the right, and you know that you can contact that union rep. That's all you really have to do. You know, you don't have to be like the rah union person that you see us be. You don't have to be that person. You just have to be there, maybe attend a union meeting, attend your orientation, know your rights. That's the thing. We have to empower each other. Part of the kind of dismantling of the labor union movement was keeping people in the dark. That's how they win. They keep us uneducated. And the less we know, the more we're manipulated. So uneducated equals manipulated. And so do your due diligence to know what you have at your table, because there might be benefits there you're not even utilizing yet. And so you just have to take that extra effort. It's not going to be given to you. And that was, like I said, part of how they kept us kind of down, is to make sure we don't have it. Just like voter suppression, we got the vote up in the South. You know, we got Georgia voter registrations like exponentially grew. What did they do during the election? They started suppressing the vote. They started closing polling places in Texas too. And that's how they do that. They just keep trying to keep you down every time you try to stand up. So you have to be stronger and just keep pushing up. But you do that by educating yourself about your rights. And that's what labor helps do. As for the labor movement, yes, they have to step their game up too, because now they have to know they may have to bring this conversation to more tables, to bigger spaces, so that more people know that they exist. Because like I said, outside of a bubble, a political bubble, and maybe your family might have some labor in it, but outside of that, the labor movement, you know, like I said, we're not even taught what the hell Labor Day is about. You know, people confuse Labor Day, Memorial Day all the damn time. So that's what I'm saying, is that we have to, or as a labor movement, have to bring it to the table. You know, you have to bring it into the kitchen table, because guess what? You've been taken off the kitchen table. So now labor's got to bring it back. And not just with, oh, well, people got the job, that was labor. No, you know, put a commercial out. You're not happy with your job. Did you know you could unionize? You know, something of that sort, because the workers need you. We need you to really bring America to where they think that they are, the happy place that we think we are. We need to have better protections as workers, no matter what level. Physicians are unionizing. The residents are unionizing, because the residents were tired of getting beat down and, you know, 24-hour shifts and not getting any sleep. That's dangerous. You have a patient's life at your hands. And so they're unionizing. Tech is unionizing. So even the jobs that are high end and stuff, they're realizing that they're getting beat down too. So the labor movement isn't just for the industrial worker, it is for all workers.
Right. I saw one of the things that I saw, Market, it was so interesting that, you know, I do get contacted here and there by the media. So I have a lot of friends that work in the news industry, in the media industry. And they went through some changes themselves. They brought in, you know, I don't know if you've seen this, where they used to go out and cover a story, and you will have your editor, you will have your cameraman, you have the interviewer, the reporter. So you had a team that used to go out. Now it's one person. He's got the camera, he's got the thing, and he does everything. When I went one time to one of the news station, and I did an interview in their studio, I was blown away by what I saw, because 2 years back I did the same interview, the same station, and the place was lively. You have people everywhere. There was one person that was the person that was doing the interview, and then somewhere in the building there was another person managing the robotic cameras. There was nothing else. 2 people. And I saw like 20 people before. And everything by again, technology taking over. So as we come to Margaret, you see a lot of this stuff. You're a scientist. You see a lot of the things that that are being developed and stuff.
Yes, I mean, I did work and do research in robotics. I mean, it's very widespread. But automation certainly is a big component of robotics, and I think it is definitely a concern for workers because, Amazon in particular runs a certain kind of schedule on the floor in the warehouses that is really designed to be ready for when the robots are ready to replace the people. So people are working, extremely hard on the floor with very little time for a break. They're getting injured, and it's because that role is really for a robot that can do these repetitive tasks. So yes, automation is definitely coming. I'm a little bit, I'm not like so anti-automation because I think that it can be beneficial for society. What I am against is depressing wages, and then what the solution is a UBI right now. And on the one hand, a UBI sounds very good. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting a paycheck, right? But the reality is that the reason why we have to demand a UBI is because capitalism is no longer sustainable in terms of wages. Capitalism does not provide a fair wage anymore, a livable wage anymore. And that's really the reality of the situation. And we have to really realize that when we're demanding a UBI, we're actually saying that, okay, capitalism isn't working, but we'll still keep capitalism so long as you pay us, right? You're bribing us to keep capitalism. And it's only a Band-Aid. And I think it would only really work for a little while because capitalism is so unsustainable. So it's better for us to now really understand the situation that we're in and realize that, yes, if workers truly own the enterprises such as Amazon, automation could help workers because that extra money that would be made could be shared amongst the workers instead of going into the stock market and making the CEO so rich that he can spend a small percentage of his wealth on sending himself into space, into suborbit. Like, big deal. And I think that when we see it that way, we should not necessarily think, oh, automation is bad, but think like, how can we make it work for us? And how can we be the people who make the decisions in the enterprises and not just leave it up to the boss, Jeff Bezos. He was out there he was like, oh, thank you to the Amazon workers, to all the people who bought stuff from Amazon. You made this possible. Like, how disconnected from reality can you be? But that's the situation that we're in right now. And we have to really face that this is the situation that we're in, and we need to strategically determine what we're going to do about it because it is only going to get worse. The monopolization that is happening right now, it's like a whole new level of what capitalism is or was. And you see that even just in the housing market where these investors or like BlackRock are buying up homes. They're buying up like entire blocks of homes and turning them into rental units. This is really bad. And they're paying cash up front. They're paying 20% above asking. And it's very enticing to the average person who's like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to make so much money off of my house, and it's in cash. It sounds like such a good deal, but it's not. What we're doing is we're selling out every little piece of wealth that we have that we could call generational wealth, and we're giving it to them, and they're going to turn us all into serfs. So this is the situation that we're in right now, and this is the reality. When we talk about all of this stuff, like, we have to really face the facts that we're not going backward. We're not going back to the 50s or 60s. We're not going to have that. That was the golden age of capitalism, and it's dead. Those old solutions no longer work. So we need new solutions. And one of those solutions is for us as workers to finally say, no, we're not doing this anymore. No, we're not going to pay back these predatory loans. There is a debtors union, the debtor collective out there who are saying, no, we own all this money in these banks because they gave us these loans for school with these high interest rates. But what if we just say no? And I think now is the time for all of us to get to really face this reality and say, if we keep going and we just keep going and just not thinking about the situation, soon enough, we're going to have even less than what we have now. So it's better for us to accept the risks and to fight against capitalism and to just completely destroy it. So that's my my analysis for today related to the question of automation and labor.
Well,
Gina,
I know.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I know, just really quick on automation. So yes, like you said, I am not anti-automation. That is part of evolution and innovation. To continue to evolve as a species, we have to continue to innovate. Innovate means challenging the status quo. So, for example, oil. I use oil as an example about automation and what happens when we get rid of an industry. We need to move on past fossil fuels. Everyone agrees with that. But then you have the workers who work those oil rigs who actually make decent money. And they're families of oil riggers, and so they should not suffer. So that's where things like just transition come in. Just transition is a kind of a policy that writes out how we're going to transition you out of this industry. Either you're close enough to retirement, maybe we'll give you early retirement, maybe we'll give you job training to train you to basically run something that's going to be taking over this automated world. If you can run an oil rig, guess what? You might be able to learn how to run a wind turbine. You know what I mean? So things like that, just transition is key. But guess who leads in just transitions? Unions. So that is important. The bill I'm working on right now for healthcare for all in California has just transition written into it for insurance industry workers, because we know we're taking out an industry, just like fossil fuel, just like, the longshoremen who are facing automation at the docks. That just transition is going to be key. And that is where the unions can show up and show out and show that you will fight for your workers. You will make sure that they can transition into an industry or into this automated world. Because it is coming. And no, getting UBI passed would be great. But as we see, we can't even get Congress to agree on toilet paper right now. So I don't know how quickly that'll happen. So I just wanted to add that in the transition. Go ahead, Carlos.
No, I was saying, if you had any final thoughts as we come of the broadcast here today, but it's been such a pleasure having you here today with us. And there's so much we can talk about this issue: labor, workers' rights, the future, politics and labor, all those things. Any final thoughts that you may have, including your thoughts on the recall here in California?
If you're here in California and you've got a ballot and you haven't sent it in, vote no. Color in the bubble no, with blue or black ink, no purples or oranges, and go. Just drop it, sign it, and drop it in the mailbox. This is actually another dangerous election. I know people are tired of this whole bad versus more evil elections, and it's the world we live in right now. But we have gained a little bit under Gavin Newsom, and that little bit can be taken away so easily. Larry Elder does not believe in a minimum wage. He thinks that $0, like there should be no minimum wage. So imagine what that will do for workers. Like, you can go back to being paid $5.25 an hour. No, what? No, $7.25 is deplorable. Here in California, we got a $12 minimum wage. We're fighting for $15, which is not even comparable. We should actually have a $20-something minimum wage to match inflation. But don't get me started. So please vote no and just turn it in, be done with it. This is not, like I said, democracy is not a spectator sport. It is somewhat of a blood sport, and I need you to get on the field. And so with that being said, we need to unify as a people. And that is the key. The reason why we are kind of in a lot of these different places we're at, the house is on fire, is because we keep becoming divided by narratives that are driven by people who are profiting off of our misery. You might find out that coming together actually might be a little bit more happier place than staying apart. those are my final thoughts.
Thank you so much. And today, as we are celebrating workers everywhere, and you are out there with your families and just enjoying the day, our hearts go out to all those that have lost their jobs. We understand, and it's difficult, and many of you are scared. You see a potential that you may end up losing, roof over your head. You're struggling to get food on the table. You may be losing your health insurance and some of the benefits. Our hearts go out to you. It's real. It's painful. It's scary. You try to do the best you can. If you're a mom, we see you. We understand you. This is why we do these shows. This is why we fighting out there in the streets, because we want to make sure that we are representing you, representing the workers. To those fathers out there, as a father, I understand what it will mean if you don't have a job, and the scary part of not being able to provide for your children. All those things are real. So today on Labor Day, we celebrate the unions, we celebrate the workers, we celebrate you, with those that are less fortunate in mind. So I want to thank Gina, a beautiful friend, for being with us, bringing so much light in the midst of all this darkness, to be able to show hope for people out there. Thank you, Gina, so much for being with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Margaret?
So much. Thank you so much, Gina, for joining us. It was a really wonderful, wonderful discussion. I hope we can have you on again soon. And I hope that you stay healthy and safe in your work, especially because you are a nurse. And also for everyone to please, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, please get vaccinated. It sounds like the numbers in California are looking very good, but you got to get over that edge there. And for the rest of the country too, we really need a very strong push. So please don't believe the fake information that's out there, the lies that are out there, the conspiracies, and take care of yourself. So and it's nice to see your cat too, Gina, in the background.
I'm surprised that they stayed so low key this whole time. Usually they always get the news right when I'm doing something. So Cat says get vaccinated too. Gotta
protect the cats. Protect the cats. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You've been watching Stand Up, Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. We air every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your co-host, Margot Pais, and right above me, that's your other co-host, Carla Marroquin, and we're here every week, every Sunday, talking to you about the things that matter the most with the most interesting guests that we can find. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone. Have a really